why comic book movies need to embrace the Silver Age. Today's video is brought to you by Assassin's Creed Shadows, coming March 20th. For over a quarter of a century, we've lived in a cinema landscape dominated by comic book movies. If you look at a list of the highest grossing movies of all time, you'll see dozens of them, including 6 of the top 20. 7 of the top 21, 1 in 3. So the market is remarkably still there. But you're also likely to hear, if not feel, a bit of comic book movie fatigue, owing in no small part to the glut of cinematic universe offerings from studios who either can or can't seem to get the thing going.
Hey, I'm sorry about Venom.
Even the hallowed Marvel Cinematic Universe has been in a rut since 2019, if not for Spider-Man, which they share with Sony, and Deadpool, which they absorbed in the Fox buyout. I cover this stuff for a living, but I also read comics in my spare time out of a genuine love for them and that kind of superhero storytelling. As a 90s kid who grew up with cartoons, I'm a basic Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men bitch, but the more comics I read from different eras, the more I love the variety you get from reading things from the whole history of the medium. Unfortunately, on the movie side of things, we haven't had a lot of variety. We've just had Captain America: Brave New World, which, whether you liked it or not, I did not, you can't tell me it wasn't tonally exactly the same as a half dozen other MCU movies. Thunderbolts** has potential certainly, but Florence Pugh out here saying it's like an A24 action movie actually has me less excited. Grounding in realism in superhero movies is so 2008 and 2000 late. I don't know why I needed to say that Black Eyed Peas reference. Without a doubt, July is where my focus is because we're getting 2 movies that have a potential to give us a fresh new superhero movie landscape. And ironically, it's by taking cues from a 60-year-old era of comics. Superman and the Fantastic Four: First Steps both seem to be harkening back to the Silver Age of comics with their focus on hopeful stories, science fiction shenanigans, and bright, colorful characters. Maybe it's time comic book movies enter their Silver Age. We'll explore that more in just a moment, but here's a special peek at today's sponsor, Assassin's Creed Shadows.
One more step and you die!
I offer you the same choice.
March 20.
The era of Silver Age comics is generally agreed to span from 1956 to 1970. The Golden Age, of course, came before and goes from 1938 when Superman first appeared until DC's big franchise-wide restart and the birth of Marvel Comics as we know it today. By the 1950s, superheroes had lost their appeal and comics focusing on horror, crime, and romance began to take up a greater share of the market. However, after several controversies arose, in which comic books took the blame for the rise of juvenile delinquency, the industry implemented the Comics Code Authority in 1954 to police itself. Basically, this was akin to the Hays Code in movies 2 decades earlier, so as to get Congress and watchdog groups off their back. This meant anything too violent or dark in funny books wouldn't fly. Sorry, EC Comics. In an attempt to regain some of that lost readership after the code, comics publishers brought back superhero books. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were still hugely popular, but almost all of the other superheroes had fallen off in sales figures or been discontinued entirely. DC wanted to revamp everything, and even their Holy Trinity got overhauls in new continuities. The Comics Code meant edgier stories and darker themes couldn't appear in stories, even the originally darker-hued Batman. So why not steer into the brightness? Appeal directly to the kids of the era. Most scholars agree the Silver Age unofficially began with DC's Showcase number 4, which saw the first appearance of a brand new version of The Flash. Instead of Jay Garrick obtaining his super speed from literal gods, Barry Allen was a forensic scientist who got his from a bolt of lightning shattering a rack of volatile chemicals into him. This shift towards science and science fiction came just as Atom Age and Jet Age technology became not just exciting, but cool as shit. People flying across the country or even the world was faster than ever, and in fiction, movies about Martian invasions overtook vampires and werewolves. DC editor Julius Schwartz was a big sci-fi fan, and after the success of The New Flash, he oversaw the change of a number of other Golden Age heroes. The biggest of these changes was Green Lantern. Instead of Alan Scott, a train engineer who got his powers from a magic lantern, Hal Jordan was a hotshot test pilot who gains a superpowered ring from an alien visitor. To kids of the 1950s with their model jets and chemistry sets, Hal Jordan and Barry Allen were neato kino swell. That's the kind of thing they'd say back then. In 1955, DC introduced Martian Manhunter, an alien living on Earth in the guise of a human police detective, who, unlike Superman, could not pass for a regular Earthling without shapeshifting. This was at a time when alien invasions were all the rage, little green men from Mars and all that. But while most Martians were seen as scary threats, John Jones, or John Jones, was someone kids could look up to. Also in 1955, superheroes got a dog. All of them. They all got a dog. Krypto the Superdog first appeared in Adventure Comics number 210 as the best friend of preteen Clark Kent, aka Superboy. Turns out Krypto was the pet of infant Kal-El on Krypton, and Jor-El put the pup in a rocket too to watch after the last son. Parallel evolution, so dogs on Krypton look like Earth dogs, except they all have the same superpowers. Batman, not to be left out, also got a dog in the form of Ace the Bat Hound. In one of the most glorious examples of 1950s comics, Ace was a lost German Shepherd whom Batman and Robin found, and Bruce Wayne went around putting up flyers with the dog's picture on it. The dog began coming along with the dynamic duo and helping take down bad guys. But because the dog was now a flyer celebrity, I guess, Bruce was worried people would recognize him if he started going around fighting crime, so Batman made the dog a mask. Are you listening to what I just said? Batman made the dog, you know, a dog, a mask so people wouldn't recognize him. A dog. A mask for a dog. Krypto, meanwhile, wore a cape when flying around and took it off when he was just a regular dog. Nobody seemed to notice or care that it was the same looking dog. But that was big in 1950s. A boy and his dog stories were all the rage because even if a kid didn't have a ton of friends, they could always play with the family dog. Villains in this period included supremely sci-fi baddies like Brainiac, Hector Hammond, and Metallo, or wild and colorful gimmick villains like Captain Cold, Mr. Freeze, Mirror Master, Gorilla Grodd, and Falseface. Even Golden Age villains like the Joker got a Silver Age facelift from scary to silly. One of the other big innovations of this era for DC was the Justice League of America. The Golden Age had the Justice Society of America, of course, but this team was going to include all the A-listers. In The Brave and the Bold number 28 from March of 1960, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter teamed up to fight the massive alien threat, Starro the Conqueror. The three biggest Golden Age characters, plus the two biggest new characters, a newer, very alien-themed hero, and Aquaman. Because people like Aquaman.
I dig it.
This team-up proved to be a massive hit, and while Superman and Batman wouldn't show up in every issue, they're far too big for that, the idea of a literal super team of superheroes worked wonders and made DC big bucks. Upstart Marvel Comics, formerly Atlas Comics, wanted their own slice of the superhero pie. Enter Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Ever heard of them? I don't need to tell you that Lee and Kirby are the most hallowed pairing of writer and artist in the history of comics. In November 1961, Lee and Kirby debuted their first big superhero title, Fantastic Four number 1. They became Marvel's first family. I said the thing! Give me $1. Utilizing a revamped version of the Golden Age hero, the Human Torch, the team were cutting edge at the time, gaining their powers after being bombarded by cosmic rays on a space mission. As would be the norm for Marvel going forward, the Fantastic Four balanced fantastical sci-fi adventures and wild power sets with everyday relatable human troubles. Johnny Storm was a hothead kid who felt out of place. Ben Grimm, while turning into an almost indestructible rock, felt his new look made him ugly and a monster. Reed Richards was the world's smartest man whose powers allowed him to literally stretch himself too thin in a number of different directions. And Sue Storm was always grappling with being overlooked, exemplified by her turning invisible. Despite these deeper themes, the stories were wild and the villains, people like Mole Man, Molecule Man, and the Mad Thinker, were all mad scientists, and the Skrulls, Impossible Man, and especially Galactus would pit the FF against alien invaders. In the years after the success of the Fantastic Four, some of the biggest names in comics debuted, from luminaries like Lee Kirby, Steve Ditko, Larry Lieber, and Don Heck. Spider-Man, Thor, and Hulk debuted in 1962, Iron Man and Doctor Strange in early 1963. Then in September 63, we got the debut of both the X-Men and the Avengers. Spider-Man alone had the best villain roster of any new hero, and still rivals Batman as best all time, with the first 20 issues giving readers the likes of Chameleon, Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Electro, Mysterio, Green Goblin, Kraven, and Scorpion. It's safe to say 80% of all the best villains of any given character you like came from the Silver Age. And no, I've done absolutely no math on this. So now that I've given you an abridged, potted history of the big two in the Silver Age, acknowledging I've left out a ton, I want to get to the bigger question here.
Can I have my shoe back?
Why do I think comic book movies of today need to pay attention to the Silver Age of comics? Because I love Clock King! Okay, thank you for watching. Please like and hit subscribe. The real reason is what that era represents. Yes, the 1950s and 60s were some of the most turbulent times in America until, well, the last 10 years. Post-World War II gave us the unrealistic hope for affordable homes with white picket fences, while also ushering in McCarthyism and some of the worst racism, sexism, and certainly homophobia ever to that point. The 50s were the period of time all the backward-assed f***s like to point to as the good old days for America. But what the comics industry gave us was superhero stories that were remarkably uncynical, even hopeful and aspirational. I'm certainly all for media to reflect our current landscape, and it's currently on fire. So I'm not saying movies need to ignore that. But since Batman Begins 20 years ago, and especially since The Dark Knight 3 years after that, a great many comic book movies feel the need for realism above all, even when it doesn't work. Also in 2008 with the birth of the MCU, but really with 2012's The Avengers, we got the other prevailing superhero movie tone, which was metatextual commentary on how weird it is that superheroes are a thing. I swear, if I see another movie where Iron Man or Star-Lord or whomever sees an alien explode and says, well, that happened, I'm going to join Greenpeace.
Hit a guy, hit it there.
I don't even know if they're a thing anymore, but I'm going to join them. And I'm not saying I don't want humor, but postmodern media savviness with regard to superheroes is not fun anymore. These are the biggest movies in the world. Stop making it seem like we ought to be kind of ashamed for watching them. The trailers for both Superman and the Fantastic Four First Steps feel like such a breath of fresh air to me. For Superman, we get the bright and colorful metropolis. We see outlandish things like the huge kaiju creature. We see the hero unabashedly saving people in the face of more overwhelming odds. And of course, chiefly, we see Krypto, the goddamn superdog, with the cape and everything. He's not a bit. He's not played for meta laughs. He's there to take Superman home. Just based on what we know of this movie, this Superman is coming into a world that already has superheroes in it, and the people are already kind of over them. The three other heroes we see are Guy Gardner, a late Silver Age Green Lantern who really came into his own as a blowhard in Bronze Age comics, alongside Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific, both newer reimaginings of Golden Age characters. So maybe Superman, with his uncynical lack of irony, comes in to instill hope in the all-too-disenchanted world. That sounds pretty good to me right now. The Fantastic Four First Steps trailer takes us back to the 1960s, to the Silver Age itself, when people believed in science and breakthroughs happened constantly, as the space race meant we looked to the stars. The heroes are all either geniuses, or at least highly skilled, even before they get superpowers. While the story is less clear, we still see that Galactus rears his enormous head, and we know a Silver Surfer will appear as well, pointing to the cosmos. The Fantastic Four is basically the Silver Age comic. So much so that even after great later runs by people like John Byrne, Walt Simonson, and Jonathan Hickman, the Lee and Kirby run is still the high water mark. Superman, despite being the very beginning of the Golden Age, seemed to adjust to the Silver Age with very little issue. He was always a bit hokey, famously a goody two-shoes, and fit snugly into the aw shucks ethos. So, why do I think superhero movies need that self-same ethos? Because Silver Age comics contain something I think these movies sorely lack. It's time we start talking about being earnest. And no, I don't mean scared stupid. Earnestness, sincerity, was a hallmark of even the silliest comics of the Silver Age. Even if you could laugh at the situation, the character still felt unwaveringly honest. There's a reason Superman or Reed Richards can feel naive by today's standards, when we lack trust in literally everyone or everything. And I'm not even saying every comic book movie needs to do this. Some things can be dark and that's great. The Batman ruled, and that's a famously very grounded movie. But I hope The Brave and the Bold, which will actually bring in a young Robin, will find the happy medium between Christopher Nolan and Batman 66. There's a lot of real estate between those two. DC Studios have already shown they have no problem embracing aspects of the comics from across the eras, not just 1986 to 1987. It's Marvel I really hope gives us a cosmic shift in future movies. The fact that Spider-Man No Way Home had the gall to make a joke about the name Dr. Otto Octavius is so annoying to me.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
We buy into this stuff. The world buys into this stuff. We can have comic book movies without pointing out silly names from 1962. They're the biggest franchise in the world. Why are you still self-owning for no reason? I hope when the reboot comes and everything goes pop, we We get characters who are allowed to be unabashedly goofy. The Silver Age was a time when comics were wacky but meant it, and got about as far from the real world as possible. But they also opened up ideas in readers that led to some of the most interesting and best fantasy sci-fi characters and stories in subsequent generations. I have no way of knowing if either or both of Superman and the FF movie will fully adhere to Silver Age trappings, but I also don't need them to. At that point, it'd be a period piece and easy to go into parody. But the scape of this world is pretty hellish right now, and I'm just looking forward to a guy and his super dog both wearing capes, and a big rock man cooking food with a robot.
Okay.
The Silver Age was unapologetic in its whimsy and wonder, and in the current Dark Age, that feels so incredibly necessary. But tell me, what do you think? Are you looking forward to lighter and more hopeful superhero movies? When applicable. I don't want an upbeat Punisher or anything like that. Do you think Superman or Fantastic Four will be the silveriest? Most silver. I don't know what's correct. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe, this time for real. And thank you again to our sponsor, Assassin's Creed Shadows, coming March 20th.